Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
I think we're always looking for a better way, and I think we probably need some solutions to some of the unintended consequences of some of the things that have happened now, and I'm sure that, some people will come up with some solutions, but you have to be able to adapt to whatever the circumstance is, and that's certainly what we've tried to do.
Good evening and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider Television, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Well, you just heard Nick Saban speaking last week before playing in the Regions Tradition Celebrity Pro-Am in Birmingham. It was his response when asked a question about whether he is worried about the future of college football based on recent trends like NIL and the transfer portal. Now, there have been a lot of changes in college football over the last 12 months, namely, as I mentioned, NIL and the portal. NIL deals seemingly have become, well, pay for play. They were designed for student athletes to be able to make money off their name, image, and likeness with companies while in college, but it's become basically these collectives are, it's money for recruiting and the transfer portal, let's be honest. The NCAA hopes to reinforce some guidelines in recruiting and warns that boosters operating some of these collectives will still leave their schools open to punishment if they're not following the rules. Good luck with that. The ongoing discussion of the name, image, and likeness power struggle will likely lead to contentious discussions at next month's SEC meetings down in Destin. All right, let me bring Rodney in. The SEC has, well, I don't know if they have more money and resources than any of the other conferences. Maybe the Big Ten could be right there with them, but certainly they are in good shape financially. And now the question is, for the betterment of the league, if you don't have some type of an agreement on the national scene, do you think these football coaches and basketball coaches and other coaches can come together, maybe even if it's just a gentleman's agreement in the league in regards to how we're going to handle NIL going forward?
I think they have to. I really do, Gary. I think there has to be some uniformity. We've talked about this. You've got some schools that have been handling it one way, other schools handling it a different way in terms of the way they utilize the NIL for recruiting purposes. I think it's given some schools advantages because some other schools are reluctant to kind of push the envelope the way maybe a school like Texas A&M has. Let's just be honest. That's what they did. They used it in recruiting last year to the fullest advantage to them to, lure some top recruits, and I think some other schools were reluctant to do it. There has to be some uniformity. There has to be some rules, guidelines that everyone follows.
All right, I've admitted it before. I'm kind of old school. I thought the student athletes were getting a lot more through cost of attendance and their scholarships and all of the academic support and living expenses and all those things that go with it than people gave the system credit for. Having said that, Rod, I didn't really have a problem with name, image, and likeness. I saw it work last year with Bryce Young. We saw some video of John Mechie. Montana Fouts has been an example, I think, of how it was intended. You're in college and you've got companies that want to honestly use your endorsement ability and your star power to help them gain business, and they're willing to pay you for that. But as you alluded to, this past recruiting season, we saw that, listen, money is being put out there and dangled in front of these recruits and in front of players in the portal that, hey, come here and we'll get you the money through NIL. Whether there's anybody lined up to genuinely want to sign on with them or not. That's the problem here, and that's where people, I think, were naive when they said, well, this is just going to be name, image, and likeness. No, it was always going to open up recruiting faux pas, if you will.
Yeah, I did. I think you laid it out there very well, actually. And, Gary, you look at it, and you take a high school kid, a junior in high school, okay, a quarterback. He's offered $8 million to commit to a school. This has happened, okay? So, I mean, this is something that you talk about the spirit of the NIL. That wasn't it at all. And a lot of schools, I say a lot, some schools are using it in that way to fill out their entire recruiting class, basically. And, again, that's not something that I know Alabama hasn't done it that way. And a lot of other schools haven't. But that's why it's important that there has to be some rules, has to be some guidelines, uniformity, and there has to be some enforcement of those rules.
Yeah, not only is that $8 million quarterback that you mentioned that out there, but it's out there in this conference.
That's right.
Real quickly on Alabama. And again, Alabama's not perfect. We know that. But I do think for the most part in this first year of NIL, Alabama has treated it within the spirit of what it was supposed to be about. And because of that, though, Rod, you can make the argument, quite honestly, that Alabama's behind in regards to NIL with these collectives and what they have available to offer student athletes as opposed to some of the teams they're competing against.
Yeah, but I think they took the right approach. I think they didn't want to push the envelope. They wanted to make sure that they were within, being compliant and all of these things.
Being within the rules.
I will say this for people out there who are concerned. I know Alabama's working on a program now that the people I've talked to, and some of these aren't associated with the University of Alabama, they think it's going to be the model for college football.
Okay. Well, I certainly think there are some smart people associated with this athletic program within the program and people that support it, that's for sure. All right, Rod. Now it's time for Coach Talk. Alabama men's basketball head coach Nate Oates also took part in last week's Region Tradition Celebrity Pro-Am, and he had a media session too, and he was asked about recruiting, specifically what he planned to do with the final 2 available scholarships that Alabama has for its 2022-2023 roster.
Trying to use them. We got to get somebody that, a couple of guys we've gone after got a little scared with our current roster, so we need somebody that's willing to fight for minutes. And we got a pretty good roster right now, but we need to add at least one. You don't have to play 13 guys, but we'd like to add at least one, if not both those open scholarships.
All right, here's the roster situation. Alabama has 11 scholarship players, 2 less than the NCAA limit of 13. One of the scholarship players, guard Javon Quinterly, is recovering from a torn ACL, and Alabama's lost to Notre Dame in the NCAA Tournament. He probably won't be back before the start of SEC play. Another scholarship player, guard Murray Burnett, did not play at all last season after transferring in from Texas Tech and suffering an ACL tear in September. He's not even back to playing live basketball yet. All right, Rodney, you've got 2 scholarships available. Let me bring you back in regards to this because you want to fill them if you can. That's the idea. You get 13. And this is just some talk out there, okay, for what it's worth. I'm not trying to say this is the case, but there's some talk that Alabama had its eye on a couple of players for those 2 scholarships. And again, NIL money was not there available to those players' liking, so they want to look elsewhere. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, I've heard it. I think that's probably the case in a couple of these situations where they had some players that they were interested in and other schools had NIL opportunities for them that were, intrigued them. So I think it has hurt Alabama basketball to this point. All
right, so still looking to fill 2 scholarship spots. One thing that has to help Alabama is the success on the court. 2 years ago, that great season. Last year made it back to the NCAA Tournament. A lot of guys going to the NBA, first-round picks. So hopefully they'll find 2 good players to fill those spots. But the roster will look a lot different from a year ago, that's for sure. All right, let's move on. Alabama women's golf finished second in the NCAA Regional in Franklin, Tennessee. And the team, because of that second-place finish, advanced to the NCAA 2022 championships in Scottsdale, Arizona. In fact, Alabama flying out this afternoon. Alabama's Polly Mack fired off 20 birdies through 54 holes. She was crowned the Franklin Regional Champion. That's awesome. Now, Alabama will try to win the program's second national championship. On the men's side, Alabama did not qualify as a team, but Cannon Claycom is currently tied for 12th in the men's golf regionals in Bryan, Texas as an individual. And he has a chance to move on to the NCAA championships as an individual. Again, Alabama men did not qualify for regionals. Well, still to come on Tighter Insider Television. Alabama baseball suffered another setback, just 2 more tough losses, this time against their arch rival Auburn. And can Alabama put together some momentum, first of all, going into the SEC tournament? Can they make it to the SEC tournament? We'll discuss. And also, after an early exit at the SEC tournament, can number 6 national seed Alabama softball bounce back in an NCAA regional? They are hosting this week. We'll discuss. And coming up, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number on your screen, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can give us an email. Send it to us at TITV@WVUA23.com or even tweet at us. Use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide and has been doing so for well over 20 years now. Tighter Insider TV will return right after this. Yeah, that collective yell is always sweet when you're a sports team. You know it's a good thing. Welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Well, the 2022 NCAA softball tournament bracket was revealed Sunday evening with the Crimson Tide earning a 23rd straight postseason bid and coming in as the number 6 overall seed. And you know that means that they have an opportunity to do what they set out to do, and that's make it to the Women's College World Series. They are a number 6 overall seed, which means if they win the regional, they will host a super, so they'll stay at home. And if they qualify out of the super regional, which they're the only program still to make it to all of the super regionals, Alabama will be headed back to the Women's College World Series. And Montana Fouts certainly is a big reason for Alabama's success. And why not? She's only the best pitcher in the country.
Well, I do know that you can't really expect anything leading up to these things just from experience, but, you know, we're really excited just because Murph always says we got to beat the best all the time just to win the whole thing. So we're just really excited, and I think they're great teams coming in here, so we got to be prepared.
And, Rod, this is a really strong regional. As, you know, when you're a 6th seed, you know, the number 1 seed obviously supposedly on paper gets the easiest regional down to number 8. But Alabama gets to host, and if they win, they get the super. But clearly Stanford is a top program in the country. Murray State is a strong team, and even this opener for Alabama on Friday against Chattanooga. This is a Chattanooga team that plays good softball. They're just up the road. They're not going to be intimidated by Alabama. So you never take it for granted is my point, and you've got to earn your way to Oklahoma City to be part of that 8-team College World Series field, and it starts with winning the regional. You don't worry about the super until you get through this first step this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's real important, obviously, that they play well early, get off to a good start, Gary, maybe gain a lot of momentum, because this has kind of been a, you know, again, Alabama softball's really judged harshly, as you know. You know, maybe not quite been about what some of the fans expected, even though it was really good. But I think this is an opportunity now. The goal is to get to Oklahoma City. So, you know, this is where it starts.
Yeah, disappointing SEC tournament, no doubt about it. First time to lose in the first round since 1999 as they fell to Missouri 3-0. But you know what? They got on back to Tuscaloosa. They were locked in as a top 8 seed. Now, Rodney, it really is about what you do going forward. Yeah, you would have liked to have won the SEC championship. Yeah, you would have liked to have won the SEC tournament championship. Kudos to Arkansas for winning both. But it's all about what you do going forward now. You can't look back in the rearview mirror at all.
Yeah. No, you can't. This is where it all starts, Gary. And again, I think this is why you really want to start well. You mentioned the opponent, the upcoming opponent. Yeah, you've got to take everyone seriously. I think this is when this team can maybe come together and make a run. Now, hopefully, they can do that. You know, get back to Oklahoma City and see what happens.
All right, let's move on. Alabama baseball suffered 2 more close losses. Hawk, if you've heard this one before. This time it was at Auburn on Friday night. 3-2, 1-run game, and 6-4 on Saturday when they had a 4-0 lead right off the bat. On Sunday, they were in another close game, tied 2-2 in the bottom of the 5th when lightning and weather, and the SEC has a travel rule that on Sundays a game has to be completed by a certain time, which means it has to be started back at a certain time. They didn't make it, so that game was canceled. So Alabama now is 27-24 overall. 10-16 in the SEC, and Rod, they've got Arkansas coming in here, the best team in the SEC West, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and you know they're not guaranteed a spot in Hoover yet, so much less an NCAA regional. And you know, somebody on my radio show called in, I think it was yesterday, and said, well, maybe they'll play well against Arkansas, and I said, well, I'm not sure that's the problem. I think they played pretty well a lot of these. It's not like they're going out and getting beat 13-2 on Friday, 10-1 on Saturday. It's a 1-run game here. It's a 2-run. I said on Friday night against Auburn, Rod, it's a 2-2 game in the 7th, and the kid for Auburn gets handcuffed. He hits one right off the inside of the bat down the right field line, barely fair. It turns into a run-scoring double to win the game. Then Bama's up 4-0 on Saturday and can't hold it. So playing well is one thing. They got to find a way to win a couple games against a really good team.
Yeah, and like you said, they've lost, I don't know how many 1-run games. I haven't counted them up, but it's been a lot.
I want to say it's like 14.
Yeah, they've lost it. And, you know, since they beat Tennessee up there in Knoxville in that Friday night game.
All downhill.
Yep.
And Arkansas is good. But you know what? You just got to keep playing. That's one thing, as Coach Bohannon has said. This team plays hard regardless of the situation. But playing hard isn't going to be good enough. They need to win a couple games this weekend. Well, coming up on Tider Insider TV, former Paul Bryant Stampede star and Alabama football player Braylon O'Neal feels the love from a Power 5 program. We'll explain. And next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, there's the phone number, 205-348-9882. And let me tell you this, you folks that say you can never get through, Stu tells me phone lines are open right now. So if you call in, we'll get you on. We'll be back with phone calls and emails, maybe a tweet as well, right after this on TITV.
It mean the world to me for the see how they interact with my son, my family, and they took him in as if he was like one of their family members. So, yeah, most definitely home.
Indiana Hoosiers have added Brylan Lanier from Alabama to the secondary there in Big Ten country up in Bloomington. Lanier was a three-star recruit out of Paul W. Bryant High School. He signed with Georgia State. You might remember if you follow the local football scene, and went over there and you know, some family considerations, came back, walked on at Alabama's preferred walk-on. Rodney really performed well, you know, in practices, didn't get a game, but I mean, he's got some talent. And, you know, he said that the Alabama experience really helped him. He said, obviously, he would have preferred a scholarship, and he's got that opportunity, but he talked very, very well about what he learned at Alabama. And I know the whole Alabama family, that's one good thing about Nick Saban. He doesn't work against guys. You know, if guys want a better opportunity, I'm sure he put in a good word with the coaching staff at IU, and this is a great opportunity for a local product.
Well, I think a lot of the practice video that he had at Alabama, a lot of these schools
Absolutely.
had access to that video, were given access.
He was locking some guys down, man.
Yeah, and to help him. And he's gone against some of the top, you know, receivers, certainly. And you know what, Gary, there was a time when he would have probably been a star here, you know.
Well, he might be a star in Indiana. Tom Allen has built a nice program there in the Big Ten, and we wish him the best. All right, phone line time, and we have a line open, but right now we're going to start it off with Rick over in Brent, good friend of the program. Hey, Rick, how's it going, man?
Fine. How are y'all doing tonight?
Doing great, Rick. Good to hear from you as always.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a question on the NIL. If I'm making $800,000 and I'm a 5-star, I don't need that scholarship, and I could pay my own way. Does that mean Alabama can have over 85 players?
All right.
And release some scholarships?
Yeah, Rick, it's a great, great point that you make. But the problem with that is competitive advantage. And I know they don't seem to have a problem with it in baseball. But if you are a contributing member of that team, you're going to count against the 85 if you're recruited in and you're a contributing member of the program, whether you're on scholarship or not. That's just the way they do it, because otherwise, particularly now with NIL, you could put a roster together of 85 scholarship players, then you might have 25 more of your best players who don't count against your 85. So it's all about the 85. Now, Rodney, I would like to see them go up to 95 in terms of scholarships, and I think we're going to get to this point. This rule about only being able to sign 25 now is a joke. That's got to go with how the roster turns over. But that's the reason, and I'm for it not being that way, because you'd have certain schools, maybe Alabama would be one of them, but they would load up on guys that didn't count against the scholarship total, and it'd be a huge unfair advantage if you were playing some teams that might not even have 85 on scholarship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, I think the 25 limit's going to be dropped. I really do. I think eventually, it may be very soon, when that 25 limit every year is dropped, but you're going to have to stay within the 85. I agree with you. I wish they would go up to 95.
Yeah, I think it's time. All right, let's get to an email, and it's the email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Services, serving your family like our family. I wonder how Ajay Hall feels about Texas fans now. If Coach Saban can't get through to a player, no one can. All right, what James is referencing is, you know, Ajay Hall supposedly on Twitter, I don't follow his Twitter, took down all references to Texas. There's a lot of speculation about whether or not he's actually going to play there. I assume he will until I hear otherwise, but I will say this. He's got some growing up to do. I don't care if he's playing for Steve Sarkisian, Nick Saban, Rodney Orr, me. So I think a lot of it is on him, and he'll find out very quickly that fans are fans, whether you're in Austin, Texas, or Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Yeah, and I think there was a stink made today, partly due, Gary, he's not on the Texas roster. Well, he hasn't enrolled there. Tyler Steen's not on Alabama's roster. Tyler Harrell's not on Alabama's roster. Those guys are coming in June. They'll be on the roster when they officially enroll. Same with Ajay Hall at Texas. And listen, Texas expects Ajay Hall to enroll in June as planned. That's the way it stands right now in terms of your question.
All right, thanks to KDM Services for our email of the day. We'll be back with more phone calls and emails. 205-348-9882 is the number if you want to get through. You can give us a call. We'll be back after this. The Alabama men's track and field team finished second at the SEC Outdoor Championships. The women finished 8th. Hats off to the men. Back-to-back second-place finishes, and that's tremendous. The Crimson Tide back and forth with perennial power Arkansas. Alabama only finished 5 points out of winning the championship. That is just, great job. And Bama will return to action for the first round of the NCAA championships May 25th through the 28th. All right, let's get right back to the phone lines. Our good pal BT is with us here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, BT.
Hey, Garrett and Rodney, how are y'all doing tonight?
Doing all right. Bill, what you got?
Okay, Garrett and Rodney, I want to ask about the defense. How's it going to be for this season?
All right, Bill.
My question to you, Rodney.
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, I'm not going to compare back and say it might be the best defense since whatever. The game's changed a lot. I do say this, on paper and based on what I saw on the field last year, this defense, I think, has a chance to shape up as one of the better defenses in the country this season.
Yeah, I think front to back, when you look at it, Gary, they've got some players with experience on the defensive line. Justin Boybe, DJ Dale, Byron Young. Those guys have played a lot of football over the last 3 or 4 years. And Tim Smith's another outstanding player. They've got some depth there on the defensive line. And those two pass rushers, Will Anderson and Dallas Turner, probably the best in the country. And Chris Braswell, who I think will make a big impact as well. You got 2 really good inside backers, maybe more. With some of the young players, the secondary's really solid. BT, I think this has a chance to be an outstanding defense.
All right, BT, thanks for the phone call. Thanks for all our calls and emails. We'll be back to wrap up TITV right after this. All right, Alabama women's rowing competes in the Big 12 because they don't have enough squads for the SEC, but Alabama women finished second at the Big 12 Conference Championships out in Austin, Texas. Texas won the championship. It's the 3rd straight season Alabama has finished second in the conference championship meet. Way to go, Alabama rowing. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of Tider Insider TV. Thank you for joining us, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don't forget, if you missed any of the show, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 or find it anytime at WVUA23.com. And we're going to leave you tonight with the brand new first 25 years of Alabama softball exhibit at the Bryant Museum. Get by and check it out. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Have a good night, everybody. Roll Tide.